This is a production of Cornell University.
So welcome to this morning's plenary session. I wanted to thank especially International Programs in the College of Agriculture and Life Science for their sponsorship of this morning's plenary on e-learning in Africa. And I also have the pleasure of introducing today's moderator, Helene Dillard, who is the professor of plant pathology and also the director of Cornell Cooperative Extension. So I'm going to turn it over to Helene, and then I'm going to keep track of the time. So the idea here is that the panelists will speak, and then we'll have plenty of time for questions and discussion at the end.
Thank you. Is this microphone working for you? No. Okay, I see it now. Good morning. This morning's topic is going to be on e-learning for impact in Africa. And as director of Cornell Cooperative Extension, e-learning is really the new pathway that many of our programs are taking. And so this is of interest not only to those of us working nationally or in New York State, but internationally as well. Many of our faculty are trying to develop some e-learning modules to be used overseas as well as at home. And so we were able to pull together a really outstanding panel. And so I'd like to go through and introduce them each, one at a time, and then afterwards we'll circle back through and they'll each have 10 minutes to talk about e-learning and the impact in Africa. So to my left is Dr. Stefan Einarson. He serves as Director of the Information Technology, the IT, for International Programs of the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences at Cornell University. In this capacity, he has been involved with or led numerous distance learning initiatives specializing in the developing world. He has extensive experience with IT, with a focus on video over the internet, building network and communication infrastructures in remote or poorly served areas, and creating learning content to deliver over that infrastructure. Stefan holds a BS in electrical engineering from Union College and an MBA from Rensselaer Polytechnical Institute. Thank you, Stefan. Next is Dr. Naalamle Amissah. Dr. Naalamle Amissah is a lecturer in the Crop Science Department at the University of Ghana and also serves as the program coordinator of the West Africa Center for Crop Improvement, a center that is established at the University of Ghana to train plant breeders at the PhD level with expertise to improve the indigenous crops that feed the people of the West and Central African subregion. She holds a doctorate and a Master's of Science degree in horticulture from Cornell University and a Bachelor of Science degree in agriculture from the University of Science and Technology in Kumasi. Her research focuses on the selection, evaluation, and propagation of economically important plants that are either difficult to propagate or at risk of extinction, as well as the development of improved technologies to ensure their successful establishment as cash crops to improve livelihoods of indigenous. The next speaker will be Dr. John Derera. John? He's a native of Zimbabwe. Dr. John Derera is a specialist in seed technology, maize germplasm development, integrated plant breeding, and data management. He received an undergraduate and Master of Philosophy degrees in agriculture at the University of Zimbabwe. And during 1996 to 1998, he completed a student internship in maize breeding at the International Maize and Wheat Improvement Center, CIMMYT. In 1999, he joined the Department of Research and Special Services in Zimbabwe as a research officer responsible for setting up the National Variety Testing System for seed certification and plant breeders' rights. He obtained professional training in seed technology and management of intellectual property rights at the National Institute of Agricultural Botany in the United Kingdom and at the International Agriculture Center in the Netherlands. He worked as a plant breeder at Seed Company Limited, the biggest seed company in Africa from 2001 to 2006. He obtained his PhD degree in 2006 and assumed the position of lecturer at the African Center for Crop Improvement in South Africa. Currently, he holds the position of Associate Professor of Plant Breeding at the University of KwaZulu-Natal in South Africa. He conducts research in specialty germplasm development for fresh maize production, popcorn, vitamin A, and enhancing maize adaptability to climate change using biotechnology tools. And finally, we have Rikin Gandhi. He is the Chief Executive Officer of Digital Green. Rikin's interests include sustainable agriculture and technology for socioeconomic development. He co-founded Digital Green as a research project in Microsoft Research India's Technology for Emerging Markets team, and he now leads the spin-off of Digital Green that works to amplify the effectiveness of agricultural development globally. Rikin is a licensed private pilot and received patents for linguistic search algorithms that he helped develop at Oracle. He has a master's in aeronautical and astronomical engineering from MIT and a bachelor's in computer science from Carnegie Mellon University. So with that, we're going to start with each speaker giving 10 minutes of presentation. After that, I'll open it up with perhaps a question, and then I'd like to hear questions from the audience. So our first speaker is Dr. Stefan Einarson.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to be talking about e-learning with Cornell, Cal's Transnational Learning, and thank you for having me here. Transnational Learning is a program that leverages experiences and resources from CALS to work with partner institutions, mainly in the developing world, with the aim of increasing food security. The sweet spot that we're really trying to get at is sort of the area where information technology, agricultural development, and education and research come together. That's where we're sort of aiming our efforts. 3 example programs that we work with and are typical to what we're doing are working with partner universities to help support their local teaching with e-learning from Cornell, working with peer organizations, helping them to establish their own streaming media and e-learning production platforms, so helping them to do it themselves, and providing a conduit to Cornell's Mann library to provide a mechanism for utilizing Mann's extensive resources with partner institutions. This needs to be updated, but we're working in over 11 African countries: Thailand, the Philippines, India, and Mexico. We have over 1,000 modules that we have gathered together, and this is just a sample list, including Mendelian, quantitative, and population genetics, plant reproductive biology, experimental design and statistics. You can read the list, but it goes on and on. Mostly all in the ag area, mostly all in the upper level classes and graduate level, PhD level classes. Many of the samples might look like this, where you have the talking head off to the right there, the content, the PowerPoint slides, and the ability to move through the lecture as you would want to. Just as an example, we're recently been involved with 3 Indian institutions helping to establish their e-learning potential at BHU, AAU, and SVAPUT. If you ask me exactly what those stood for, it might be hard. But we've been teaching them about e-learning, going there and helping to create their e-learning platforms, helping them to learn to create their own e-learning content. In addition to that, with this project, we've helped to establish a learning platform that allows them to, the professors to put in assignments, schedule readings, allow chatting back and forth, do quizzes, have extra materials for independent learners, forums for students, and a calendar of when things will be happening. Right now, I'd like to transition to a summary of an e-learning Africa report where 413 respondents talked about how they viewed e-learning from 42 countries, where it was targeted at practitioners involved in e-learning. What you'll see here is that laptops and mobile phones are sort of the up-and-coming technologies used to support learning. And mobile phones has been growing quite substantially over the last couple of years. But also, interestingly, TV and radio has not dropped off the list. It's still there, and it's still being used quite significantly. At least 31 and 34% respectively felt those were important technologies to support learning. Top constraints of e-learning from this report include lack of training, limited electricity, lack of political will, bandwidth constraints, lack of appropriate hardware, and lack of financial resources, all in order there as contributing factors to constraints that people experience in Africa in developing or using digital technologies for learning. Also, 50% of the people said that they had experienced some form of failure with respect to e-learning. And they sort of said that this was something that, in certain senses, was to be expected. But 71% said that they had seen, that they felt that they were mostly all positive outcomes from using technology, and only 1% said that there were negative outcomes with result to using technology to help learning. Lastly, I'd like to talk about, I don't know how many people have seen this, but this is Gardner Group's hype cycle. And this describes sort of how technologies sort of are adopted and utilized through time. You have trigger technologies, then they go through a peak of inflated expectations, then to a trough of disillusionment, then to a slope of enlightenment, and then a plateau of productivity. And for education, and this is mostly in the developed world, in the plateau of productivity, what you see is student enrollment, databases that keep track of students. That's now a mature technology that's being utilized a good deal. Wi-Fi technology, 802.11, is being used quite significantly and well. Lecture capture and retrieval tools are being used very well. On the slope coming down from here, you've got the two sets of phones being utilized. Mobile learning is being enabled through mid and low range handsets, and with smartphones. And lastly, what I'll mention, and this is the end of my comments here, we've got digital preservation of research data being here, and lastly, MOOCs. MOOCs stands for Massive Open Online Courses, which has become sort of a very hot topic right now in e-learning. So you can see through this hype cycle where things are, according to Gardner, right now. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to the next speaker. Thank you very much.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. It's great to be back in Ithaca, especially in the summer. Anyway, my presentation will focus on the use of e-library resources in the training of students in Africa, with specific emphasis on what pertains at the West Africa Center for Crop Improvement. Okay. The West Africa Center for Crop Improvement, commonly known as WACI, we just refer to it as WACI, is located in the oldest university in Ghana, which is the University of Ghana. The university was founded in 1948 with a current student population of 30,000. The West Africa Center for Crop Improvement is a partnership between Cornell University and the University of Ghana. It was established in 2007 to train plant breeders over a 10-year period. And funding for this initiative was from the Alliance for a Green Revolution in Africa. And in addition, subsequently in 2008, we received additional funding from the Generation Challenge program to train an additional 4 PhD students. The mission of WACI. WACI's mission is to develop a critical mass of plant breeders who will lead the conversion of genetic and molecular discoveries into innovative solutions that will benefit Africa and the sub-region. Currently, we have 54 PhD students enrolled in different phases of their research and PhD program. We have 27 students coming from Anglophone African countries, and we have 20, and the other half coming in from Francophone African countries. Also, we are not doing too badly. We have 35% of our students being female. And these students are coming in from eight different African countries. Just to give you a brief background, the WACI program is a 4-year program. The first year, students take academic courses in plant breeding and related areas, and in addition, also take advanced modules, which are taught by visiting scientists. In the 2nd to 4th year, the students conduct research in their home countries. So one of the prerequisites to join the program is that you need to be affiliated with a research institute back home. That way we can guarantee that once you're done with the program, you are going to stay in Africa and develop varieties that will help with the challenges that we are facing in Africa. Then in the final year, which is their 4th year, the tail end of the final year, they come back to WACI, where they finish up their thesis and then submit their thesis for a review. Our visiting scientists play a major role in our program, and the visiting scientists come from all over the world, and they help train our students through the advanced modules that they offer. Advanced modules are offered in different aspects, plant breeding and its related fields, as well as the students are exposed to seed business development, scientific communication and library tools, and then we offer some leadership training to our students. There are quite a number of resources that are available to our students at WACI. They have access to TEAL. They have access to online resources, library resources like Agora and OARI. And most importantly, they have access to the Mann library facility. Our students establish journal and citation alerts using the Mann library resource that is available. And this also helps them to keep abreast with the latest information in their field of research. In addition, through the Mann Library interlibrary loan requests, the students are able to request articles that cannot be found in maybe TEAL or Agora, and also book chapters, which helps also to really enhance their research projects. Also, they have access to literature searches, and the librarians at one library help with reference assistance as well as literature searches. It's very interesting because at WACI also we have access to the Cornell Base Camp, which is a platform where visiting scientists will post lectures, students will post lectures, and there's a lot of interaction that goes between lectures as well as their associate faculty, visiting scientists, etc. We have access also to a video conferencing facility, and this has enabled Cornell faculty to participate in proposal reviews of our students. So students at the end of the first year are required to come up with their thesis proposal. They go through a presentation session, and the access to video conferencing makes a tremendous difference because you have inputs from all over the world. Lastly, with the help of our dedicated associate faculty at the University of Ghana, WACI staff, visiting scientists who come from all over the world to make this program a success, the e-library resources available to our students through Mann Library, our mission of training plant breeders in Africa for Africa is being realized. I'm happy to say that we'll be graduating our first cohort of students, 8 PhD students, on Friday, July 26th this year. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Dr. John Derera.
Okay. I will talk about the African Center for Crop Improvement, which is basically a sister program to the West Africa Center for Crop Improvement. This one is focused on students from Eastern and Southern Africa. So it is a specialist unit at the University of KwaZulu-Natal in the Republic of South Africa. It was established in 2001 with co-funding from the Rockefeller Foundation, but later on is funded by AGRA, the Alliance for Green Evolution in Africa, which is a proxy of the Bill Gates Foundation. The mission of the ACCI is not different from the mission of the WACI. It's to train PhDs in plant breeding on African crops in Africa, on African food security crops. The mandate is quite clear. We have to generate at least 80 PhDs in plant breeding for Africa with world-class training level. The students come from 14 countries in Eastern and Southern Africa. So we need to produce world-class breeders who will succeed in Africa under very difficult environmental conditions, challenges, several constraints, working with limited resources. So that's kind of a product that we are focusing on. That all the graduates who succeed in their home country at their home research station. The idea is to retain as many talent as possible in Africa. That each student's PhD is just the start or the beginning of a bigger picture of a breeding program in their home country that will contribute to food security. And of course, that all students have to graduate on time and save. Coming on to the program, it is unique in the South African context in that we give coursework for 2 years initially during the first 2 phases. We are now in the 3rd phase of the African Center for Crop Improvement. Students now take 1 year of coursework followed by 3 years of research in their home countries. There's also a unique supervision structure in that the supervisors are full-time supervisors. They don't give undergraduate lectures. They just focus on supervising the PhD students. They supervise the students in South Africa during the 2 years of coursework, followed by 3 years in country. Also, there's an appointment of in-country co-supervisors to support the program. The emphasis is to create plant breeders as leaders. And of course, they must gain competence and skills in specialist tools to deliver. The students come from the Eastern and Western Seaboard. I'm just illustrating here that we train from Ethiopia, Uganda, coming down to Kenya, and we also have students from Tanzania, We have students from Zambia. We also have students from Malawi, Zimbabwe, and also we have students from Mozambique, that is on the eastern seaboard of Africa. It's a huge network also on the western side of the continent. We have students from South Africa, Namibia, and from West Africa. Initially, we had to take students from West Africa before WACI was founded. So we have students from Burkina Faso and Nigeria who have already graduated from the system. Now turning to learning resources. We enjoy a lot of support with the Mann Library here, where students get literature through the Mann Library loan services. Students conduct their literature search, and then they request for the literature from the library here. Cornell also participates in the coordination of the review of research proposals by students. This is done by Dr. Van Grassen, and Stefan enables it. And in addition to that, some Cornell faculty from the library have been coming to the University of KwaZulu-Natal and provide communication training to students to use databases, etc. So the research proposal component of our students goes through rigorous review by international reviewers who are nominated by Cornell. They go through the proposals, and then later on, Cornell convenes a video conference. The panelists normally sit here at Cornell, and the students will sit in South Africa, and they have to defend their research proposals. Coming to publications, we've done more than 100 papers have been published from our students this week in peer-reviewed journals. It's quite challenging in the sense that we're supposed to publish our work with the 20% of the journals in the world, as required by the university quality system in South Africa. And as reported yesterday, we faced some challenges as well, in that some of the work is supposed to be published in African journals because it's local work. Due to challenges of adaptation in agriculture, we have to focus on local resources, and that work must go into local journals, but there are not many journals which are in that top 20% of the world from the African side of things. Coming to e-resources, our students face limited connectivity in their home research stations in remote rural Africa. At the university, it's not a problem. The Wi-Fi program is all over the place. Again, being situated in South Africa, we don't have access to TIL for our students. But when they go home for research, they can access it because their home countries qualify. We also have challenges of 10% budget in our library services, which might affect students' access to databases and other general subscriptions. There are, however, some opportunities for e-learning resources. We are currently designing a new program to train Master of Science students in plant breeding commercial, with funding coming from Bill Gates Foundation through AGRA again. In this program, we'll be designing some e-lectures with assistance of Iowa State universities. So 3 universities in Africa, Makerere in Uganda, KwaZulu-Natal in South Africa, and Einarson in Ghana, will be offering this program with e-resources being provided by Iowa State University. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Dr. Rikin Gandhi.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here at Cornell. My name is Rikin. I work at Digital Green, which, as was mentioned, we started up in 2006, initially as a part of Microsoft Research, in which we spun off in 2008 as an independent organization that really is trying to partner with existing agricultural extension systems and trying to leverage technology to amplify their effectiveness. So imagine for just a moment that you are an agricultural extension officer in rural India, and you're tasked with training farmers on a new technology or a new agricultural practice. Now, these farms are remote and the terrains are difficult to navigate. Communities are large and diverse, even with countries like India having 100,000 extension agents, both public as well as private sectors, as well as Ethiopia having about 54,000 public sector extension agents. It still is a daunting challenge. there's also the issue of motivation, not just for farmers to trust an extension officer coming in from the outside and trying to train them on a new practice, but also for extension agents toiling in the sun and in India finding that less than 2% of farmers actually recall learning a new practice that they apply in the preceding year from an extension officer that they attended a demonstration of. At the same time, farmers in India also report that 12% of them have exchanged information with one another about what practices they grew or what technologies they applied, and applying those practices that they learned from their neighbors or from their families or friends. So what we're trying to do at Digital Green is to build upon the existing social networks that farmers already have to exchange agricultural information and leverage technology to be able to do mainly 3 types of activities. One is to target the production and distribution of locally relevant content, to empower the communities that we work with, and finally, to really connect these communities both within themselves as well as to external agencies and individuals who can really provide value to these communities that we're working with. So at Digital Green, the first step is that we partner with existing agricultural extension systems. We work with both governmental as well as NGO extension systems that are already running programs like farmer field schools, demonstration plots, and the rest. And essentially, in each district, we train individuals from the community to produce videos that are short, 8 to 10 minutes in length, and that are by the community and for the community, and using just simple devices like pocket video cameras and tripods to shoot these videos really featuring local individuals that people can relate with. The first questions that we often see when people watch these videos is not so much about the agronomy of the practice, but rather, what is the name of the person in the video and which village is he or she from? And along the way, we capture all sorts of data about that video, what crop it features, what season that practice is applicable in, what geography that video was produced in, to be able to later target the distribution of those videos. Now, at the village level, these videos are screened using an offline Pico projector device. It's a $150 device which I'm holding in my hand and which you can see also in the picture on the screen. But essentially, there's a person from the community who's typically a community service provider or sort of village level extension intermediary, who basically is screening these videos to groups of women primarily. We work with about 150,000 women today. They primarily belong to existing women's self-help groups. And so they're already engaged in some savings or credit types of activities. And now what happens is that on a fortnightly basis, they're watching one new video, and that video is being facilitated by an individual from the community who is screening this 8 to 10 minute video not in a passive way, but rather pausing, rewinding, asking questions, getting feedback, really having a dialogue with the community as they're watching these videos. And as they do so, they again capture data about what videos they show in which locations, to which individuals, what questions do these individuals express, and post the video being screened, they also track which practices people actually apply for themselves on their own farms. This essentially is flipping the broadcast television model that countries like India have been running for the last 60 years, where you have to be at a particular place or a particular time to watch a video. In this case, the videos are being shown at the community level with just small groups of about 15 to 20 individuals at a time watching this video being facilitated by somebody from the community on a regular basis. And as these questions come in, then we capture that data to be able to inform the next iteration of the videos that gets produced. So all that data that I was just sharing that we are capturing builds up an analytics suite of data. So you can think of this as essentially a Nielsen ratings type of system for the 150,000 farmers that we work with. We are able to see what's the most popular video in a particular place or at a particular time, the least popular practice, the questions that farmers are raising, which of these videos may be more or less confusing to others. And we found that this approach of targeting the distribution of these videos based on that data and that feedback can improve the efficiency of these existing agricultural extension systems of government and NGOs by a factor of 10 times per dollar spent. Now, these videos, too, that we've produced are all available online on YouTube. There's about 2,600 of these videos produced till date in about 20 different languages. In the last 1 year, we've actually started receiving a large amount of viewership even on YouTube, about 750,000 views to our YouTube videos. But of course, most of the communities that we work with in these rain-fed, mostly tribal sets of communities, their main access point is these offline Pico projector screenings. And what we're able to do on our website is to connect the data about how many people are watching a particular video and how many people after that video was screened actually adopted the practice that they saw, and be able to sort these videos in a variety of language and geographic as well as subject matter dimensions, which is obviously another layer on top of YouTube, which just gives you that one search box, which can be difficult to navigate through given the volume of content that's on YouTube. We can also see on this videos library is the actual individual questions that farmers express to those facilitators in those small group screenings. And the questions have a variety of types. Some are questions of clarification, that people don't understand what they saw. Some are questions about how can I access a particular product, service, or resource that I might need to take action on perhaps the practice that I saw. And some are questions that are orthogonal to the video. You might show a video on something like seed treatment for paddy, but the questions might come in about some mastitis issue in cattle. So that then informs the production of the next set of videos, which might be more relevant or important to the communities that we work with. We also plotted all of this data on a Google map so that we can see how some of these issues of things like pest or disease perhaps are spreading across geographies, and where perhaps we can produce a video in that particular area and share it preemptively before other communities might be affected by it. Beyond just targeting of these videos, we're also using this data to empower the communities by creating sort of non-monetary based incentive structures for the farmers as well as the intermediaries to really be able to compare their performance with one another. So here, this is a tool that we call Farmer Book, which I'll show another screenshot of. But you can see a ranking of the farmers based on a notional score, which is the percentage of practices that you've adopted to the total number that you've seen. And we've also done this for the extension intermediaries, and allows them to also think about why one individual might be more effective in sharing best practices than another. This information is also shared at an individual farmer level. This is all open source online on farmerbook.digitalgreen.org. And you can see for an individual woman the series of videos that she saw over the course of time, and see with these icons which of these practices she was interested in, which she may have asked a question about, and which she subsequently adopted. And this is really a reflection tool that the groups use at the village level to think about why did one woman adopt one practice versus another woman adopting another practice, and perhaps bringing these two women together to share ideas and experiences with one another. We're also seeing how we can connect this data on Farmer Book to other communities. So there's a mechanism within Farmer Book that you can follow these individuals, and whenever they adopt a new practice, then you get sort of an update on your Facebook wall. And as you know, the first places that these rural communities and individuals in general connect online via their mobile phones are YouTube or Facebook, this provides a mechanism that they can actually see themselves and their peers in an actual social network. We're also seeing how we can connect sort of this data and this feedback about these individuals with other communities, like in urban India, where there's a growing middle class that's increasingly connected on places like Facebook and playing games like Farmville and Cityville. We built a game called Wonder Village, where you're essentially able to connect your social network of friends with this offline social network of farmers that we work with the aim of really trying to build some of these social networks closer together, which are increasingly being taken apart, just as it is here in the West. Even in India, there's a growing divide between rural communities and urban ones, and we really want to be able to see how we can make agriculture be seen as a vocation of choice rather than one of last resort. So just to conclude, we sometimes think about the digital divide as somehow trying to bridge the so-called developing world and developed world. But of course, it's not just technology that's going to be able to cross this chasm. Things like physical infrastructure, human capital, political institutions, and finance are necessary foundations before things like Microsoft Office, Google, Facebook, really provide sort of the gains in productivity that we find in using them. So in our experience, we really found that by partnering with government, NGO, private sector organizations that are working with these communities and bringing in technology to really amplify their effectiveness and broaden the participation of the communities that they work with, that's really where you can see technology and video, for instance, really sparking the curiosity of communities to taking their one small step towards improving their lives and those around them. Thank you very much.
So So we've now heard 4 presentations, and we are opening it up for questions. I'm sure there's quite a few, so I'll start with the floor. We'd ask that you come forward and use the microphone that's in the middle here so that everyone can hear the question and it can also be part of the recording. So are there any questions at this time? Okay, I'll start off with one. My first question would be, what are some of the, we heard from 3 actually, universities and institutions. I'd like to know what are some of the steps that you are taking in your institutions to improve e-learning for your students. You mentioned some of the impediments. Some of them were things like infrastructure, equipment, et cetera. And I'm just curious, what are some of the things that you see that you can do to improve your e-learning opportunities at the universities? So I'll pass this on.
At WACI, what we do is we have moved from slower internet. We've adopted fast internet speed. We've increased our internet speed. And then when it comes to the students going back to their home countries, internet is a problem, like you mentioned at ACCI. It's the same with the WACI. So what we've done is that we have a system where the students are able to purchase modems, which they will use when they get back to their home countries to try and help, solve some of the problems that we're having.
Thank you very much. One of the steps that we've taken is, for example, we are looking at where the students can use the Galaxy tablets by Samsung. And another one is, which just mentioned, is for them also to get some modems so that they can use. I must say the mobile network system is also doing very well in Africa. So if they get things like the Galaxy tablet, they'll be able maybe to download their lectures through their Galaxy tablets. So that's one way we're looking at it. The other one is, in my presentation, is this opportunity which is coming through the Bill Gates Foundation this time. The emphasis in the MSc plant breeding program is for students to use technology in both data collection, data analysis, and the learning part of it. So because of that, there'll be a good budget that will come with it that will enable students to get the relevant technology to be in e-learning. Thank you.
Question from the floor. Here comes a couple.
My question is, first of all, my name is Deva Reddy. I am from Texas A&M University. My question is to Mr. Rikin Gandhi, Digital Green Director, I think. Mr. Gandhi, I would like to know, see, perhaps you know that in India, where now the system exists, almost all the 16 or 17 states out of 28 states, 16 languages, almost all the 16 languages, there are quite a number of TV channels are there, especially with the emergence of cable TV, and almost 24 hours of telecasting is going on. Also in the morning, early morning, as well as in the not in the early evening, they have all these farmers programs are there. And actually they are all monitored, or actually they are face-to-face question and answers type, and everything is there. Couple of minutes back, I was actually viewing your digital green videos there, especially for example, mulching, gingerbread mulching, or dehorning of the crossbred cows, like that. So many things are there. So it is amazing business model. What I think, it is a very excellent business model as far as it is concerned. But how do you propose to make use of all these videos through these cable TVs and other things? And also, in addition to that, we also have a very vibrant program. All India radio programs are there. Of course, their videos are not there. But you have the Doordarshan is there. So how do you propose to make use of your videos, these business model videos? You have about 2,600 or so videos are there, and different languages. And just 1 second, I want to say that most of them appears to be, they're just only dialogues between, I think, one woman and one extension officer or extension person just answering the questions, and also a little bit of demo is there. So how do you propose, finally, how do you propose to exploit these videos through the cable TVs. Of course, you also mentioned the social networks and other things. Thank you.
Thanks. That's a good question. So actually, it's interesting. You know, we've just started partnering with the government broadcast network, which is, as you mentioned, Doordarshan, which is going to begin actually distributing sort of our content in the geographies in which they're produced across some of their regional cable networks, in addition to their existing sort of agricultural programs that they have going on. And you know, from their perspective, there's kind of two bits to mention. One is like the video content that they're pretty excited about is really that local sort of flavor to these videos, featuring individuals that others can relate with, which is kind of different from the traditional sort of broadcast television programs, which really are featuring mostly the government officers. And the other bit is for us, that these government or other broadcast television types of setups are really good for awareness raising, but in terms of like affecting sort of changes in practice or behavior, we've done some distribution of these videos even amongst like local village cable networks and distributing these videos over micro SD cards and other means. But what we find is that interest, awareness sort of improves, but in terms of change in behavior, we really find having that sort of peer group sort of setting where you have a facilitator interacting with that group and sharing this video is pretty important. So we see these things as hand in hand. It's not like you have to do an either or sort of situation. That's why we're kind of leveraging this opportunity to broadcast the videos over the government channels. But to affect really the behavior change and also to provide supporting services. Like if you show a video on poultry cultivation, production, and folks need a way to access chicks, some of that needs to be done like sort of physically. And so that's where these intermediaries also have like a pretty important role to play. But yeah.
Next question.
Yes, hi, I'm Martin Kesselman from Rutgers University. 2 years ago, I went to the M Libraries conference that was held in Australia on mobile, libraries. And there was somebody from Kenya, and I'm sorry, I don't remember the organization and her name, but she talked a lot about mobile learning and the focus on mobile learning and potential in Africa. And I'm wondering if people in your panel can talk about that. I think very often, where in terms of libraries, in terms of e-learning, we tend not to be nimble enough in gravitating, to new technologies and new opportunities and possibilities. This morning I was hearing about, the 13-inch, iPad, coming out. So, technology moves at a very quick pace. And how can we move, the content, that's already created, to new models, especially mobile, because it's made such a huge, impact in Africa that I've heard that more people have access to mobile networks than they will to electricity, probably by 2015. Thank you.
Good question. I'd just like to add to that I don't know if many people saw this, but Coursera, the large MOOC provider, has just gotten close to $65 million to start to deploy its university classes into the developing world. And one of their major strategies for doing that is utilizing mobile technology. Okay, they've just signed contracts in China, in India, Brazil, and they're looking to think about how they can take their model that is currently mostly just online and bring it down to a mobile platform. So that will be another major potential development in this, and seeing Coursera potentially surge out into the international arena as well will be very interesting.
Yeah, no, I think mobile is really exciting. I think, I mentioned that we've seen about 750,000 hits to our YouTube videos in the last year, and these are very local language how-to videos, so it's kind of a relatively significant number. And most of those, around like 80, 85% of those are coming via mobile, right? So definitely people are getting access, but of course, to stream video over phones requires a fair amount of bandwidth. So we actually also have partnerships with groups like Vodafone, which are distributing, for example, like these videos just in an asynchronous way over memory cards to folks. And so I think, yeah, to the extent that you can leverage these platforms for a variety of purposes. Now, our videos are more geared towards like agricultural training. There's also other roles that you could leverage mobile technology for, from market price and weather information, which tends to work out better since it's a smaller bit of data that's easier to transmit over mobiles than in richer forms of media. As well as like in places like Kenya with things like mobile money being very popular, there's also a lot of opportunities to kind of get some of these transactions as well as the training to kind of be connected over mobile networks.
Next question.
Okay, thank you. I'm very glad to learn the good news from the first speaker about the contract issue with China, as I also know that there are many good practice in China in rural areas about the use of mobile phones and laptop, etc. So my question about your presentation is, you mentioned a lot of concentrates about like the infrastructure, the hardware, and also lack of government willing issues, etc. So do you have any coping strategies to deal with these constraints?
Yeah. Those are good questions as well. So as far as the constraints are concerned, the lack of bandwidth, I think, that was number 3 as one of the major sort of areas for constraints. That's one that I think is being made easier and easier as time goes on. We're seeing more undersea cables being laid down, larger and larger amounts of bandwidth being circulated to Africa and to India. So we're seeing some of these constraints coming down. The cost of hardware is coming down. We're seeing more and more people utilizing these mobile technologies, so they're in people's hands. So being able to get the content to them will become easier and easier. So I think that you're starting to see some of the breakdown of some of those constraints. The financial ones are always going to be an issue, but there are, with many of these things, because technology brings down prices and we're seeing more and more penetration as far as bandwidth is concerned, we're seeing the lowering of the bar as far as what people are able to be able to enter into this sort of arena and be able to utilize these technologies.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and next question for the next speaker, the second. From your presentation, that we can see you're working in many fields, including leadership training and like some specialized breeding techniques like that. So my question is, have you ever compared the way that you do, that is to focus on many areas or just to focus on one area? So how about the efficiency between these two kinds of working style?
The important thing is you want the plant breeders that we are training, we want them to have a holistic view of plant breeding. And training them in seed development, these are things that they are going to be using. They are going to go out there and create new varieties, and these varieties will need to be multiplied. So then giving them an indication as to training them in seed business technology, leadership training, these are things they will need when they get back to their host institutions to function as plant breeders.
So that depends on your target audience, your user. So for the leadership training, it's for some people, and so for some other technical issues, it's for some other people. Different trainees, or for the same group of trainees.
All the students go through the trainings that I've talked about.
That's for students, for the promising
It's for the students.
Okay.
It's the PhD students that go through the training.
Okay. Oh, that makes sense. Thank you. And for the last press, okay, about the case for India, my question is very, very simple question. So, can you provide some background information about the literacy rate of the rural farmers? And how about the proportion of your expected users who can access this video online?
So the literacy rate in like rural India, like by official statistics, is around 70% of people are like literate by like government statistics. But in practice, and especially for the women that we work with, it's much lower, right? So it's significantly lower. Maybe entirely the opposite, so closer to like 30% literacy rate amongst the women that we work with, especially amongst these rain-fed tribal communities. And then in terms of the folks who are accessing it online, it's not like really the small-scale tribal rain-fed farmers that we work with in sort of interior parts of India really don't have the access to the internet to be watching these videos online. It's really more like the sort of peri-urban types of farmers who are those ones who end up stumbling upon these videos. If that answers.
Okay, thank you.
Ed.
Hi, Ed by Cornell University. Excellent presentation. I'll target my question to my two colleagues from Africa. As you know, historically, the agricultural research and development has been domain for the public players, that is universities and national agricultural research organizations. But lately, there's been quite a shift, especially on the commercialization end, that there is more and more private sector participation. That is, both locally owned seed companies are getting into that space and participating. My question then is, what are we doing that, I see you including business training as part of your curriculum there, but what are you doing to make sure that once the students go and get a job in the private sector, they can remain connected professionally in the absence of professional bodies where they can meet? How can they continue to access the information that you're providing through e-learning once they have left the public domain, when they don't have an affiliation to a university or a national agricultural research institution? How can they continue to be an active researcher and a scientist when they've joined the private sector?
Thank you very much. I should have mentioned that when the students graduate from the system, they remain attached to the institutions. What happens for both students coming out of the West Africa program and South Africa program is that when they, upon graduation, they become grantees for AGRA. They become plant breeders. They receive grants from AGRA to start their breeding programs. So the network still remains together through the AGRA program. We are also working towards the establishment of Plant Breeders Association for Africa, which will also be one unit whereby they remain together. And AGRA is also funding some private seed businesses to increase the number of seed companies in Africa. So some of the breeders will definitely be going into the private sector, but there's still an attachment through AGRA. Maybe what we need to do is to work to sustain all these networks beyond AGRA's project. Thank you very much.
Last one, yes. Christian Binnick from the CTA. I think my question is more addressed to Stefan and Rikin. Now, since yesterday, we've heard a lot about the use of importance or the use of metadata to be able or to facilitate the sharing of information and finding the information when we need it. So in the field of e-learning resources, what is that community doing in terms of tagging or adding metadata to the resources they've developed? You talked about 1,000 modules being identified that were considered relevant, and then you had lessons that were developed for those modules. Similarly, now we heard Rikin talk about the metadata he added to the videos. So what advice would you give to this community about the need for harmonization or the use of vocabularies on these different types of materials that we can actually use? Thank you.
Where did I start? So the main thing, I think that you bring up a really important topic. we've stumbled with respect to this over time. And I think one of the main things to do is to do it carefully, because oftentimes what we did initially was just put lots and lots of information about videos or various pieces that we wanted to catalog, and then it became an ineffective tool. So going back through it and finding a very constrained set of metadata that we wanted to utilize to sort of characterize the various videos that we had was a much better way of doing it. And working, I think, in concert with other people in order to make sure that if your information is going to be distributed to a larger community, that it works within their frameworks as well, would also be something to think about.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's also equally important and challenging for us. We had all this sort of library of videos that had been produced, and then we went about trying to create with some sort of framework to categorize these videos into different sort of subject matters. And now we're in the process of trying to actually release sort of a Khan Academy-like view to the video, so people could watch these videos in sequence. But this is actually an aspect that, you know, being here at Cornell, I've been talking to a number of folks to see if we can work together on having your input, because you guys obviously have much more experience with this than we do. I would just also say that there's also a role for like dynamic metadata, and that's something that we do, I think, reasonably well, which is to capture this data about viewership and adoptions and questions, which really makes sort of that content have sort of a life of its own, so people can actually understand whether this is something that I might use for myself. Sort of, if we just had the content in isolation, then it would be hard to distinguish between two videos on the same subject. You wouldn't really know which video maybe is more or less effective than others. So I think there's also that role for kind of connecting some of that dynamic usage data to the content as well.
Next question.
Okay, Mr. Gandhi, besides the video, are you planning to use a different media or mechanism for extension?
So video is the main thing that happens at the community level, but of course we're partnered with an existing extension system, so it too is doing its sort of face-to-face interactions too. If they were doing farmer field schools, they're going to continue to do farmer field schools, but perhaps not all farmers will be able to participate in them, and for that, that's where the videos really are more sort of encompassing of participation. Whereas there's also ways that we're also ripping out the audio tracks of the videos and having those actually also distributed over mobile phones to reinforce the videos, content that people might be watching. So we know this information that this farmer watched this video today, and then 2 weeks from now they're going to see another video, and what happens is we're able to kind of make robocalls essentially with sort of an audio snippet of the video to just kind of remind the farmer of this information. So we're not vetted to like a particular media. We do think like for this agricultural training video, it kind of works out well. But you know, if you're going to exchange like market information and assuming it's useful and relevant, it would be better to exchange that information over mobile phones, since it tends to be much more dynamic in nature than a video can be.
Okay. And another question, how these farmers are getting used to Facebook?
You know, it's not like we are actually introducing them to Facebook. You know, they just kind of do it on their own. And this is mostly like the folks like in peri-urban types of areas. And maybe this is related to like another question, right, about bandwidth and stuff. You may have seen in the New York Times, there's an article about how Facebook has created Facebook for everyone, or every phone rather. And it's basically trying to create like a low bandwidth version of Facebook. And you see that the first places that people go is either to do a search on YouTube for some random string, like maybe their name or their language or their geography, or to Facebook to set that up. And so one of the things that we're also doing in collaboration with Facebook is to actually seed some of these Facebook profiles with this farmer book profile information, because that ends up being like a first hurdle, is to like fill out like your name, your geography, whatever. And so in our case, we already have that information from Farmer Book, and that can just seed up a profile on Facebook. But it becomes popular pretty fast.
Next question.
I'm Neena Singh from GB Pant University of Agriculture and Technology, India. I'm really impressed by the activities of the Digital Green. I wish to know from Mr. Gandhi, like, on what kind of change do you see in people's attitude and knowledge who are using these videos in the community center? So are they able to put the knowledge and information to to work? And do you have any information on impact?
So we've published some studies to both measure sort of changes in adoption rates as well as cost effectiveness. I mentioned that figure that we found that it's 10 times more cost effective per dollar spent than the existing extension system. So there's actually a paper I'll be glad to share with you later on that evaluation, and we're doing much larger sort of randomized control trial evaluations as well. We also, because we capture all of this data on a week-to-week basis, you can actually go to our analytics sort of dashboards on our website and see, like, in the last 2 months, of the 150,000 odd folks who are watching these videos, it's around 40% of those folks have adopted one new practice. And you can actually go and drill down and see, like, which farmers adopted what practice and what did they not adopt. All of that is all open and online. Yeah, so I think that's, and I think there's also, in terms of like empowerment stuff, I think, you know, there's this nature of introducing videos and sharing videos actually also improves some of like the voices of these communities themselves, right? And you see that amongst, like, say, these people who we train on video production or facilitation, right? Over time, like, they become seen as like sort of resource persons within their communities that people kind of go to and then move into like maybe even like local political leadership types of positions. And so that obviously happens, and as people try out some of these practices, because they're very small in nature, they also gain confidence in themselves that, you know, it's not such a hopeless situation.
Thank you. Thank you for the excellent presentations. My question to Mr. Gandhi, do you have permission to upload the videos and the farmers are aware of that?
Yes, that is a good question. Yes, so we do get consent both for, you know, for the videos when people are you know, asked to be on video. So, you know, there is a very small segment of people who do not want to be on video, but in general, it's kind of the opposite situation, which is people are kind of clamoring to be shown on video because they sort of see it as an opportunity to be seen as a role model within their community. It's kind of like when you go to a rural village and you have your still camera, like all the kids and the people want their pictures taken. But in that case, like, you go back to your city and then nobody sees like that picture, right? Whereas in this case, we're taking a video with the community, by the community, and then that video is being shared within that community, and they sort of see themselves kind of being reflected as some sort of, you know, peer role model.
Thank you.
This will be the last question.
My question is to both the professors from Cornell present here. It's a misnomer in the sense when we always talk of cooperative extension service, it was born here, although it originated from Oxford or Cambridge, it originated 101 years back. But how far the extension program in the United States is working? Is it a free for program or paid for program? And in fact, when we have hardly 1 or 1.5% of the farmers involved in agriculture in the United States. So is it a free program like in developing countries where you have a free program where thousands and hundreds of extension officers are there? So I would like to be enlightened about the cooperative extension program, how it works here.
I guess I'll answer that one. So the Cooperative Extension Program, the way it works in the United States, it's run out of the USDA, the United States Department of Agriculture, through NIFA, the National Institute for Food and Agriculture. Each state has a cooperative extension system within the state. They're all a little differently organized, so that is one key thing to remember. They're not all the same once you get to the state level, but they're pretty close. The funding comes from the federal government through the USDA. There's also funding that comes from the state. And then in many states, there is still funding that comes at the county level. So there are 3 sources of funds: federal, state, and county level. Over time, the federal level has gone down or kind of leveled out. The state money in many states is the larger supporter for cooperative extension. In New York State, the largest pot of money comes from the counties. We have 56 counties, and when you add that up, it comes to about $23 million. At the state level, We receive some support, but it's not at the level of 23 million. It's around 10 or 11 million all total for various things. Most of that's in the form of grants and contracts. And then we have the federal money, which is now, thanks to sequestration, down to about 7.6 million. So when you spread that out across the state, across all the different program areas, we have 5 different program areas in New York State. We have agriculture and food systems, we do 4-H youth development, economic and community vitality, natural resources and development. We also have a huge nutrition program, and we receive federal dollars for that as well. So when you spread everything out, it's relatively thin once you get out into the boots on the ground, as we like to call it. But we do have enough money right now to sufficiently help support professorial faculty here on campus, regional agricultural teams, as well as some regional nutrition teams. And then we also have people at the county level, boots on the ground. Around 1,400 people all total in New York State. So that was the last question that we could take. This has been a really awesome panel. Please join me in thanking our panel members today.
This has been a production of Cornell University, on the web at cornell.edu.